All right, now the chat is working. Wow, we have
Look at
people
this
from
mix.
all over, from the Americas to Europe, Asia. Well,
I love it.
good morning, good evening, good night if you're dialing in
That's
from
right.
Asia. It's late for me in Amsterdam, but it's even later for you in Asia.
That's
Welcome
right.
to our third McKinsey Unpacked episode.
Woo!
For
We're
those of
mostly
you,
excited that we've been allowed to do this more than once, right, Marie? We
I
didn't
know,
know.
it
We
would
didn't know
actually
if
be
they'd let us do it
interesting.
again. Yeah.
Oh, there's somebody who says 2 a.m. for them. Wow, that's
Oh
dedication.
my gosh. We will try and have the right amount of energy, enough to keep you awake, but not too much that you can't go to sleep.
Exactly, exactly. And it would actually be interesting. This is our third sessions if we have some repeat listeners. But for those
Yeah.
of you who have joined us for the first time, I'm Marie.
And I'm Blair.
And together we have the immense pleasure to co-lead McKinsey's talent attraction teams globally. So this is, we've both been at McKinsey for 20 years and we are excited to lead our teams globally with talent attraction. And with this monthly McKinsey Unpacked session, we really want to give you a bit of a glimpse behind the scenes at McKinsey in a hopefully, like Blair already said, interesting and energizing and fun format. And we're inviting to these sessions on a regular basis different co-stars and guests from around the firm to be here with us. So for those of you who haven't joined us before, Unpacked is the name of this session, and it's of course has a pun to
Of
our
course.
profession,
Of
consulting.
course.
As you are probably aware of, that is one myth which is actually true, that consultants do travel for the projects, as we are working side by side and shoulder to shoulder with our clients. There are a lot of myths that we want to bust in these episodes. And so this monthly session is a chance for us to unpack what working at McKinsey is really like. And if you're interested, if you haven't joined before and you want to learn more about what we covered in the previous sessions, we will share the link to the recordings from the other sessions after the end of this one.
So, because everything at McKinsey comes in threes, this is one of the big secrets you learn about this place, that we have three sections to each of these sessions. The first is what we call map for the road. So this is what's on our mind, what's the direction of travel we're heading in this session. Second one is the meat of it, which is really our unpacked, where we really, as Marie said, get underneath a single topic or a set of topics and give you all a chance to get to know the real McKinsey behind maybe what you read or what you think you know about us. And then the third is snack for the road. Everybody needs snacks. We always joke all the time that that's one of our first and most important things. You go to any McKinsey office, you want to assess what kind of snacks they have. It's a big deal. But snack for the road is a tip or some sort of useful advice or counsel we can give to you so you can take it away as you continue your travels around the world. So Marie, maybe we'll dive right in because I know we're excited to get to our guest speaker today. Roadmap, what's on your mind today? What's going on?
Yeah, well, and actually, by the way, Blair, I was just sneaking in the chat. We do have some repeat listeners, so
We
hooray.
do.
Some people are
Yay.
returning. That's encouraging.
Fantastic.
That's
That's
good.
awesome.
But
That's
please
great.
give us your feedback as well, given this is still a fairly new format, and
Yes.
we want to make this as meaningful as possible, especially also as we pick themes for our Unpacked session. We really rely on your feedback. So you will, and along with the recordings from the previous sessions, you will also get a feedback survey at the end of this. So please help us shape this format in a way that's most helpful to you.
Absolutely.
So where are we heading today? I actually just returned from PTO yesterday, from a wonderful family vacation in the US. And in many parts of the world, it's getting closer to back to school after summer or winter holidays, depending which hemisphere you are in. And I know, Blair, your kids are starting school next week, I think. Mine are still,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
well,
Just kidding. I'm going to miss them so much. I really am.
well, mine, we still have a little bit longer here in Amsterdam. Mine are only returning beginning of September. But at McKinsey also, it feels a bit like back to school, right? It's because many of our large markets, this is kind of a bit where the campus hiring season kicks off for our entry level and campus based roles. And we are really excited to hire for next year or start the hiring for our next year for the campus based and entry level roles, but also already for some of our experience profiles. And we often get the question on whether we are hiring this year or not. And of course, the answer is yes, we are definitely
Yes.
hiring. So we are very grateful for all of you being here, showing an interest how to be successful in our application process. You can just ask our recruiting teams. They're very busy preparing for this. So yes, please send in your application if you're interested in joining McKinsey. Still,
Yeah,
after
it's
listening to
amazing.
this.
It's amazing to me how often we get that question, are you hiring? And, if you've joined a couple of our sessions in the past, we always love to bust some myths. We love taking some misconceptions out there about consulting or about McKinsey specifically and setting the record straight. And I think that is one that we both want to make sure we set the record straight. Yes, we are hiring. Yes, we are excited. That is why we do sessions like this, to get a chance to get to know and give you a chance to get to know us as a firm. So I'll echo what Marie said. Send in your applications, and hopefully after this session, it'll make you more excited to do that, not
that you're
less.
still interested then. That we're
If
not
it's less,
scaring
then you
everybody
give us the
away.
feedback. That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
Exactly. Well, so let's move to our most exciting part of this session today. So our unpacked part, and the real reason why I know all of you are here. So today we really wanted to dive into the application process and share with you tips and tricks how to be most successful in the journey towards joining McKinsey, hopefully at some point. And we've gotten, and this is basically, as I said earlier, please send us your feedback, because this basically comes from a large amount of questions that we received around this topic. We already share a lot of information on our careers website. We're trying to be as transparent as possible to make it as easy and a stressful process, which we know is stressful for anybody searching for a job, as little stressful as possible. But so having an interactive session where we give you our personal advice and also from our wonderful guest star today. So let's dive right into that. How can I be successful in the McKinsey hiring process? And let's spotlight our drum roll, our super guest, Dr. Ashley Schloss. There she is, our colleague and friend who's based in New York and who's one of our senior leaders of our assessment team. In addition to thinking about our interview tools for her day job, Ashley has mentored and coached, I don't know how many, hundreds, thousands of candidates.
Millions of people.
I know, to be successful in our process, including ones like herself, because you come from a bit of a less traditional background. Actually, I mean, is there really a traditional background at McKinsey? I'm not quite sure. But you have a degree in chemistry and a PhD in molecular biophysics. Ashley, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And I wish we did have a jingle or something for
we do need a drum roll or something.
Yeah.
I'll work on it so that next time I join a webinar, I have my own special jingle.
Walk up song.
Singers. You could bring some backup singers. That'd be a good idea.
Thanks for having me. I just wanted to say that I'm so excited to be here. You're probably going to hear me say excited a million times on this because, one, I'm on this call with two of my favorite people from McKinsey, and two,
we paid her to say that, by the way. So good job, Ashley. You earned your money on that one.
Just buttering you up a little bit. But I'm also worried about our audience, right? Like
that's right.
Definitely an exciting opportunity to have the chance to unpack some of the mysteries behind our interview process with all of you today.
Oh, well, we're thrilled you're here. And I know right now people are being really nice, but they're like, okay, could the two of you please stop talking and let Ashley talk? Because that is really what we want to hear about. So again, as Marie and Ashley both said, we know there is so much anxiety and frankly, misconceptions about our entire interview process. So today is really about trying to, in a real talk way, give you our tips for how to think about this process, and frankly, not just how to succeed in it, but how to stay sane, which is really important, not just when you're interviewing for a McKinsey role, but frankly, any job. So let's dive in, Ashley. And maybe we just start at the beginning and we can literally walk through sort of each stage of the application interview decision process. Let's start at the very beginning, which is, let's say I am, a talented individual like the hundreds of people on the call today. And I have lots of choices about where I could apply and aim my talents in a professional setting. How should I think about the decision to apply to McKinsey? What are the kinds of things I should think about?
This is a great question. When I first heard about McKinsey, I was also confused about making that decision. I do not come from a family that is entrenched in the business world. And so when I heard about McKinsey, I was confused as to what consulting was and what happened at the firm and what it might mean. I'd say the first stop is our website. We have videos, we have testimonials, we have articles that will tell you a lot about who we are and what we expect. I think that the website too will help you quickly realize whether or not we are for you, right? Like McKinsey is not for everyone. We're looking for critical thinkers. We're looking for people who are empathetic, who love working hard, who love new things, who want to push themselves, who want to push the people around them, who are purpose and principle driven. And, that might not be exciting for you, but if it is exciting for you, definitely encourage you to check out the types of jobs that we have here.
Yep.
And if you click on the Find Jobs button, also remember that we don't just have client-serving jobs. So if there are other roles that seem interesting to
Oh,
you,
I'm so glad
and
you mentioned that. We are a
yeah,
big,
and you
wide
fit
firm, and
into
I think
that
people
scope.
forget that. Yep.
Right, exactly. We're a huge global firm, so be picky and pick a role that
Love
feels
that.
right for you and for your experience. And while you're being picky, we're a huge global firm. We have lots of offices all around the world. You should also be a little bit picky about your location as well, right? You want to make sure that you are going to be in a place that you are comfortable working hard, right? So optimize for family, for friends, for a city that you're comfortable with. Maybe even think about going home wherever home is for you. Sometimes people try to game the system and say that they're looking for a location that might be easier to get into. That never actually works.
And it's also about the connection to a location, right? Being based in
Great.
Europe, we do have local language requirements in all of our offices. So, and that's not to, we are a global firm, of course. Our global language is English, but we work, as I said earlier, shoulder to shoulder with our clients, and very often they prefer to do projects in local language to really maximize also the impact on their organization. And it's just better for your development, to be in an environment that you're familiar with, like you mentioned, Ashley, that you have support around you, and to maximize your chances of learning and development by being able to have access to all different types of projects. So if you are based in the Netherlands and your dream is to work in Australia, don't apply to the Australian office, apply to the Dutch office, be successful here, and then transfer to Australia, or do a mobility or do a project in Australia at a later point in time.
It's great advice. And again, I think sometimes people confuse that with, the fact that we are such a global firm, which, oh, great,
Yes.
that means I should work anywhere. Not necessarily, right? I think we all would agree that we each had, I will call it strong roots by
Absolutely.
starting in locations where we had connections. We really wanted to be for the first few years of our career, at least, because that really gives you sort of your sea legs on the role. And then Marie's exactly right. Once you've got your confidence and you've built your skill set, then that's one of the best things about this firm is it is a huge global firm, and the places that you can go and grow are pretty limitless from there. So I think that's really good advice.
So let's assume I am ready to apply. I know
Oh,
where I
good.
want
Marie,
to
you decided to
go. I
apply.
know,
Great.
I've figured out where I will fit in.
The website has you excited. We love to hear
Yes,
it.
and
Okay,
I'm
good,
excited.
good.
Woohoo. So the next big question, Dr. Schloss, is how do I build a resume that will stand out and that will make me score an interview?
Okay, you're going to love this one, Blair, because it's a list of 3.
Again.
Oh, way to go,
As you
Ashley.
said earlier on, you kind of
Extra
mentioned
points.
we
See a
love list
theme
of 3,
emerging.
Way to
right?
go. Way to go.
Uh, so to build a resume that's going to stand out, you want to have 3 things, right? 1, you need to understand what we are looking for. 2, you want to understand how you can tell your story based on what we're looking for. And then 3, there's some technical tips just to make sure that your resume is palatable and easy to digest. If we start off with the what are we looking for, right? We want to see impact, we want to see substance. And so tell us what you did, tell us what that resulted in. We want to see your problem solving skills and your other abilities. So give us examples of when you've solved problems, give us examples of when you've used quantitative analysis or storyboarded, or maybe presented in a large forum, right? A presentation like this, maybe I'd put on my resume. We want to also see how you work with teams and how you lead. And so share moments where you've been an effective leader and you've been an effective collaborator. We also want to see initiative and drive, right? So highlight those moments where you've gone above and beyond expectations in a variety of different situations. The second point, how can you tell your story? We're all coming from very different places, right? So as Marie said, I came from a PhD in molecular biophysics. I was a scientist up until the day that I started at
You
McKinsey.
still are, Ashley, huh?
That's right.
I
You still are.
still
That's
am
right.
in different ways, but I'm no longer transferring liquids between tubes, right? But I still had a story to tell. You want to start by leaving humility at the door. This is not the time to be humble. You want to not downplay any of your skills and achievements. Tell us all about them, but do not lie. Do not stretch the truth, That's a values issue, and this is likely to come up at some point. And you just don't want to start off on a bad foot. You want to tell us?
Ashley, by the way, just to put a
Yeah.
point on that one, I suspect that is something that we are unfortunately going to see more and more risk of in the world of AI, right? Where AI is now suddenly such a helpful thing to help you proofread a resume or help you think of a better way to word something. If you're struggling to describe an experience or something that you led or did, that can be really helpful. But I think we are unfortunately going to see a temptation for people to embellish beyond the truth using AI. So I think that's a smart warning for all of us as we are
Right.
all trying to figure out how to navigate both the, the real upsides and potential downsides of using it.
I mean, I'm an AI fanatic. I use it to help me draft emails all the time, but AI has the tendency to hallucinate and to make things up, right? And so it's really up to us to make sure that the truth is in whatever we're submitting, even if we're using the help of AI.
I love that.
I think where I landed, what next is, you want to show us how to tell your story against the things that we talked about.
Yep.
There's the piece about being truthful. There's also the piece about telling us how you lead. You want to make sure that you have examples of leadership, not just times that you've been a part of a team, but times where you were the one that was leading that team to results. And then one thing I really want to highlight is not to worry too much about big names. We are reading every bullet on your resume to help us get context. We're not just looking for big name organizations. We're not looking at, whether or not you've gotten the opportunity to work for a big name organization so far, but instead we want to see what you've accomplished with the opportunities you've had so far, right? So we recognize that distinctive can come from anywhere, and we're making sure that we're paying close attention so that we're able to pull that from your resume.
Yeah, so even if you had a side job like working in a restaurant or a bar during a university because you maybe had to finance your studies or you wanted to learn all about customer experience, that's also really interesting. So really like put everything that could be meaningful on the resume. And like you said, Ashley, don't hold back and don't leave, how did you say it? Leave the humbleness.
Humility at the table.
Use humility at the door.
Leave it at the door.
That's
right.
Use humility at the door. And Marie, I love that part too, right? If you put that you've had maybe a side job during your university studies, or you had the opportunity to leave your extracurricular activities, it really shows that you have the ability to balance many things at once, right? Yes. And that's exactly what we're asking from any colleague that we have here at McKinsey, the ability to really think about multiple work streams at once. And that's so it's definitely something that you want to highlight on your resume if you have that experience.
I agree. And I also feel like just to underscore that point also on, Ashley, I love your point on we're not looking for big names. I think there is this mythology that somehow I have to have, this prestigious internship, or I have to come from a certain school, and that's the only way I will stand out from a CV perspective. It's absolutely not true, right? We are looking for elements of distinctiveness regardless of where that comes from. So things like academic achievement, leadership positions, as Ashley said, the grit and resilience to do things like excel academically and work at the same time. Those are the kinds of elements we're looking for, not the pedigree or the names of either the institutions or places you've worked. So I'm really glad that you said that, because we like to bust myths around here, and I think that's a good one.
We need a little myth buster buzzer.
We do. Maybe we can come up with a jingle for that.
Don't give her ideas, Ashley.
I love coming up with jingles.
With a hat or something.
Oh yeah, costume. We could come up with a Mythbuster costume. I like that. Amazing. So you mentioned 3 buckets. I think you mentioned 3.
The third one. So you guys just had some really good things to tap in. So the third one is just technical tips, and that one also comes in a list of 3 C's. So you want to be clear, concise, and consistent. So concise, you want to use bullets, 1 to 3 bullets for each role or experience that you have. You want to be clear, so no jargon. You want to use strong action verbs. It should be easy to read without very industry specific language. And then you want to be consistent, right? You want the formatting, the spacing, the font size, the way that your resume looks to be consistent throughout.
And I saw a few questions around length. 2 pages is fine. Yeah. I think I would keep it to that. More than 2 is really not needed, even for people with significant experience. And if you're just at the beginning of your career, I would say probably the majority has 1 page. When I applied, I had 1 page.
I also had one page.
Yeah,
I had one page as well. But again, we also get people who are advanced
exactly.
degree.
So I think
have
1 to 2 pages
very
is fine.
experienced. Agreed.
More than that,
Agreed.
I would try to be concise to Ashley's
That's
point.
one of the C's, which I love. I love that. I love that, Ashley. Okay, so let's assume that I've listened to your fabulous advice and McKinsey has picked me for an interview, which is probably a really good
Congratulations,
idea.
Blair.
Thank you. I don't
Well
know,
done.
20 years ago, maybe they would have made a different decision, but we'll see. But today I get an interview invite, which is interesting. And I know for many of the roles that we hire for, you get shortly after you receive an interview to invite, you get a link to something called Solve, which I saw a couple questions in the chat. But I think there's still a lot of people saying, what the heck is that? And what is it used for? And how the heck do I think about it? So Ashley, tell us about Solve.
Okay, so Solve is a game-based problem-solving assessment. We have an internal team called the Game-Based Innovations Lab. It is a bunch of scientists who have developed this game to show us how you think and how you problem solve, regardless of your background. So the most exciting thing about Solve, there goes exciting again, I told you, I promised I would use that word a lot, is that you don't need any sort of experience. You don't need to know frameworks. You don't need to know business. You don't need to be a gamer, right? You don't need gaming experience to play Solve. If you are comfortable with a mouse and a keyboard, you're ready to play. And from what I've heard, it's a really fun experience. I've gotten the opportunity to play myself and it
I
is
played
kind
it.
of cool. Yeah, it is super cool. And Solve is one part of our full picture on you. We're looking at all of the aspects of your application.
Yes.
We invite you to interview, and Solve is one opportunity for you to, regardless of your background, really show off your problem-solving skills. So hoping that if and when you get the opportunity to play, that you truly enjoy yourself.
It is really fun. It's definitely a lot more fun than the pen and paper test that we used to have until a few years ago.
Yes, well, we all can remember that. But again, I think it is really important, Ashley, I'm glad you mentioned it, that it is one data point that we use to evaluate people. So we'll ask Ashley for her tips on the actual interview process, but I think people really over anchor on any one element. Do I have the perfect CV, the perfect Solve score? There's not a perfect anything. And again, that is one of the reasons we have a pretty extensive application process and a pretty extensive interview process is we really care about getting to know the whole you and maximizing those data points that we have about you. So, and giving you as many chances as possible to shine and demonstrate your skills and your intrinsics and your capabilities without any business knowledge. So I think that's a really
And
important
preparation requirement. It's very difficult to prepare for Solve. So it's
That's
just, it's more about the mindset and how you are in a space where you can concentrate and where you have whatever it takes to just show up with your best. So, all right, hooray, your journey continues, or my journey continues now. I'm not sure about yours, Blair, but let's assume that I have been invited to interviews. Hooray. So you give me a shot.
Congratulations.
Very exciting.
Thank you. What are your best tips for helping me nail the interview? So how should, do I need to prepare? How do I need to prepare? How much do I need to prepare? What's your advice?
So our process is very transparent. So what we're assessing is written right on the website. You will find that for our consulting roles, there are two types of interviews. There's a personal experience interview, which might feel a little bit more familiar to most people. And then there's a problem-solving interview, which we sometimes call our case interview. I'll start with the how you should prepare piece. You want to invest time to practice both because they're equally important in your overall assessment. We're looking at you as a whole, both the ways that you're able to show us personal impact and the way that you approach problem solving. I'd say that when possible, practice with a friend or a colleague, someone who's in the process, or if you don't know anyone in the process, a friend who's willing to give you the time. It's really helpful to practice out loud. I had one friend actually record themselves on Zoom and watch the tape back, which
that is brave.
not my personal.
I cannot handle watching myself on tape.
I know, you look at it and
Absolutely
you're like, ooh, okay.
Right? I've not watched any of the recordings of our earlier Unpacked
And
session,
I will not be
nor will
watching
I.
this either.
But it's
But
still
I'll
a good
take
idea.
feedback
If you're
from
brave,
anyone
it's
else
still a
who's
good
watching.
idea.
But I mean, to your point, I think, and actually, if you listen to our last episode that we had with a partner from Boston, John Chartier, in the end, his tip was also to find people to practice with.
Yes.
I think that is super helpful.
Yeah. I mean, when you get to the interview, you want to make sure that you're feeling confident in how you're delivering things.
Yes.
And a lot of times you can build that confidence by having someone else physically there, either through Zoom or in person, to help you get over those nerves, right? And get to the place where you're feeling really good. And on the other hand, right, we all have to be honest about the fact that prep fatigue is a real thing, right?
Yes.
So sometimes we'll practice ourselves into doubt and frustration. And so making sure that you're striking the right balance of having the right muscle memory, but not finding yourself doubting your capabilities and skills and answers. You should
And
absolutely
becoming
think
too
about,
robotic, right?
yeah.
I've definitely experienced that in I always say it's like a muscle you all have. You just need to wake it up and strengthen it a bit. But the problem I sometimes see when you over practice, you stop thinking yourself. You're trying to think about, oh, I saw this framework somewhere in my practice.
Exactly.
And then you, rather than really thinking and problem solving and sparring with your interviewer and having an engaged conversation, you're trying to recite frameworks that you've memorized. So practice like you would practice for anything important, an exam or an important presentation, something that you care about, you will prepare for, but do it to an extent that you feel good and comfortable.
Right.
But you don't need to rehearse and know the perfect answer, because that's not how consulting is also like. And I always say, try to have fun, because that's what we do in the day to day with our clients. If
Exactly.
you are interested in a consulting role, right? If you don't like, especially the case part, then maybe consulting is not for you, because you will experience that type of sparring and problem solving in the team
Right.
room
And
every single day.
ambiguity every day.
Yes. Yes. I love that. And I think that's right. It's sort of, so I think the next piece of advice that you're hearing is prepare so that you feel confident and familiar with the format, but don't over prepare so that you start to doubt your own ideas, your own thinking, because that's all we want to see. All we want to see is it's the same thing on both sides of the interview, how you approach the analytic side of a problem and then how you approach the people side of a problem.
And by the way, sorry to interject, because I saw a few questions around, oh, I've applied already, I didn't make it, or I made it to final round, can I reapply? You can absolutely reapply. I don't know the number, but there are a not insignificant amount of people who've tried to join McKinsey, didn't make it on first round, but then tried again a few years
A
later
different
and
point in
made
their
it again.
career. Yep.
So we always say
The
you
first
need to
time I applied, I actually made it to the final round and didn't get an offer. And
I
had
didn't
to
know that,
start
Ashley.
here.
Okay, let's pivot here a second.
That's part of the reason that I'm so excited about talking to people about preparing, right?
I love that. How did you
My
keep your
own story.
confidence up, Ashley? How did you not take, because I think, again, we're among friends here, 837 of us. We're all talented people, and it doesn't feel good when you get told no or not right now. And so how did you keep your spirits up? How did you decide, hey, listen, I'm going to keep going for this again?
Well, I had a partner who was part of my final round interviews call me and give me feedback as to which parts of my interview went well and which parts I probably should consider getting stronger at. I've always prided myself on being really good at math, and we'll get to this part as well, but there's something about the live interview that if you haven't actually thought through how to calm your nerves and how to listen and truly set yourself up to be consistent in delivering all of your thoughts, can be a bit unnerving when you're in the live interview, right? So what I spent the next year doing is just practicing just that. Like, what are the ways that I structure my approach to answering things, to pause before answering, so that I'm giving my full picture of what I'm thinking instead of trying to answer what I'm guessing the question is going to be coming up.
I
Cool.
love
But
that.
yeah,
I
so
love that.
I mean, you get, if you are invited to the interview process and you don't make it, you will get feedback. And then we do need you to wait at least a year, because we want to see enough time that has passed to be able to show development and progress in the area that was lacking. So depending on the feedback, you might want to do another internship, or like what you said, actually focus on certain things. But then after 12 months, you can absolutely reapply.
Yep.
and
And
maybe be
I love
successful.
that. Ashley, that is such, because I think that's another myth we hear is, you have one shot, and if you don't make it, that's it. You're, quote, not good enough for McKinsey, which is absolutely not true, right? And I
Yeah,
love that
sometimes you're
you
just
have
not
that
ready.
experience.
And I don't think I
Exactly.
was
Sometimes you're
ready
not
the first
ready. I
time.
think that's a perfect way to say it. I think that's a
Mhm.
perfect way to say it. I also want to, Ashley, it sounds like you did a lot of self-coaching, and then I know we want to get to the actual mechanics of the interview because people have a lot of questions around that. But someone asked the question, like, do you need to really invest in all these? There are lots and lots of profit making, by the way, not McKinsey sponsored. We actually wish there weren't this entire industry, but all these pay for coaching materials that are out there. Ashley, did you feel like you needed that, or were you able to leverage website, your own time? How did you think about that?
Times have fully changed. We have a new candidate prep website that once
Oh
you're
yeah, that's
invited to
right. Tell everybody
interview,
about that because it's pretty
right,
cool.
once you're invited to interview, you get access to this interview prep site that has example personal experience stories in a podcast form, right? You get access to case interview materials written by the same people who write the case interviews for the actual interviews as well. There are articles and all sorts of resources that you can tap into. And you also have the opportunity to sign up for a live coaching session with a McKinsey colleague, walking you through some tips for personal experience interviews and some tips for the case interview, as well as doing a case interview in a group session. And so we are providing those resources directly from the firm. And I think that it's probably one of the best opportunities now, right? Like you can get
I
all of
agree.
that information directly from the firm.
And that was a very conscious decision we made, an investment we made to say we want to level the playing field in terms of access to good coaching materials, because not everybody has the finances to spend the gajillion dollars, or you may not attend a school or have attended a school where there was, for example, a consulting club where there are
Right.
other people helping you do that. So we're really trying to make sure that that is something everybody has access to. So agreed. Well, I feel like I don't want to run out of time before we get to the real heart of it. Marie mentioned we've got two parts of our interview. We have, learning about your personal impact and your own leadership, and then learning about your analytic capabilities and how you think about a business problem through the case. Let's actually start with the case, Ashley, because I think that's the thing that everybody freaks out about. I know I had a huge anxiety about it. What is the McKinsey case really, and how do you do well on it? Like, can we please try and bust the myth that is this horrible, hard, awful thing?
I also had a lot of anxiety about the case.
Yeah.
I think when I found out about case interviews, it was a month before I submitted my application and I was working in a lab. And from what I've heard, everyone, right, even with business backgrounds, have a little bit of anxiety about the case interview. It's because it feels brand new. It's different from most interview processes. My best explanation of what the case interview is, it's a discussion, right? It's a discussion about a McKinsey problem that reflects the types of things that our consultants work with our clients on. You're going to get this opportunity to hear about the type of work that we do, the types of problems that we're solving. And in that opportunity, we get to hear you talk through a problem that you've never heard of before, right? And we get to see how you deal with ambiguity, how you walk through your thoughts in a logical path, right? How you can be creative when it's time to think about solutions. We get to see your sense for the implications of decisions, and we also get to see your comfort with numbers, because there's definitely a little bit of math included in our case interviews as well.
But it's math for this I think is an important thing people don't always get. It's not math for the sake of doing math. Can you do math? It's really, how do you understand how data, facts, and in particular numerical facts help get you to an answer, either challenge what you're thinking or reinforce the sort of line of reasoning you're going down. So all of the problems around the math, I think, actually happen a lot in our actual team room. It's, you're having a discussion with a client and your team, you're trying to figure something out, and someone poses the question, well, what if that changed by 10%? What if we were wrong on the number of customers we underestimated? What if, in fact, it were twice that number? And everyone thinks, gosh, well, that would change the assumption. And you do that mental math to just be able to, again, do the problem solving. So, I think that's another myth that people think you're just going to be forced to sit there and do ninth grade algebra. No,
It's also about
actually
knowing what the numbers mean, right? Being able to interpret
exactly
what you have calculated and putting the numbers into a broader context.
It's
exactly
exactly that. And it's something that we all do anytime we go to the grocery store or we decide to buy a
Great
pair of
point.
shoes on sale, right? You ask
You're
yourself,
absolutely right.
well, what's a lot to me? What's a little bit to me? How much does this need to be discounted for me to say that it makes sense to make that decision? That's the type of logical reasoning that you're going to be doing in the math problems that we have within the case interview.
I
right?
love that,
Is
Ashley.
this
It
a
doesn't
lot?
have
Is
to be
this
a
a little for this
business setting.
particular bit?
Yep.
Right.
I love that.
Exactly.
I love
So you
Should we
asked
maybe
what
move
it is. Yeah.
to the, just with an eye to the clock, because I think we could talk about this for hours. Do we maybe want to move to the second part of our interview process, which is actually mostly the first part of the interviews? You don't typically in the interview start with the case, but you start with something where you get an opportunity to tell your story.
Yeah.
Right. And telling your story is probably the best way of framing this because we actually ask you to tell us a story during the personal experience interview. This again is written clearly on our website. So there are 4 different questions we ask against personal experience.
This is
There's
all on our website, by the
on
way.
the
You don't have
website.
to madly
Yes.
take notes right now.
The
It's all
question
on our
that we ask
website.
in the interview, it's on our website. We're not trying to trick you at all, right?
Exactly,
We really want you to
exactly.
feel as prepared as possible to come in and tell a story that helps us understand you and your impact to the fullest. And so just a quick tip, you want to practice this just as much as you practice.
I am so glad you said that, Ashley. I feel like because there's this anxiety around the case, anybody who ever wants to talk to me about how to prepare, all they want to do is talk about the case. And I'll often say,
Yes.
have you thought about the personal
Absolutely.
impact and leadership? And they're like, no, that's fine. I've had a bunch of good experiences in teams. I'm like, no, time out. You want to be, so tell us, what does that look like, Ashley, to be just as prepared on the experience side?
I'd say it looks like having 1 to 2 stories for each of the 4 skill categories. And
Yes.
sometimes it's hard to figure out what's a good story, what's something that really speaks to my impact. I would talk to friends, talk to teammates, talk to your parents, talk to family members about the times that they thought that you made a difference. And
That's a
you'll find that
great
some stories
idea.
bubble up that you're like, wow, I forgot about that. But I truly was the one that made a change there.
What a good, actually, I hadn't really thought about that. And that is a great way to prepare, is let people tell you how they see what are some of the top 3 things, Ashley, that you really do in groups that I think are effective. That's a wonderful sort of outside in way to think about that. That's cool. I love that. Do you find that people, when you talk about having 1 to 2 stories per area, would you agree that it's less about having a start to finish, I've memorized a story, and more of, hey, I've thought about, here are the 3 or 4 things that I'm proud of that I think I actually do pretty well when it comes to being courageous and leading others. And here's some evidence against that. Maybe explain a little bit of that, because I find sometimes that people hear story and they think that they need to go memorize a script about themselves.
I think sometimes people hear a story and they say, I need to come up with a 2 to 3 minute monologue and I'm going to hit these 5 points and I have to get through the end.
Yep.
When it's truly more about us getting to know you. And so you're going to have an interviewer that's probably going to interrupt and ask you very specific questions about what you did, what you said, what happened in a certain situation. And so when we say 1 to 2 examples per skill area, it's an example that you remember pretty well that you can answer those types of questions about, and be prepared that your monologue will get interrupted because the interviewer is trying to get to know you better.
Boy, that's such a good
really not
point.
to jar you. It's just to make sure that we are probing as deeply as we can about how you are in those particular situations.
Ashley, that's such a good point. We were chatting, we're back in sort of the back to school, getting close to back to school. So many of us are doing interviews again. And one of the things we were all kind of laughing about is how nervous we are as interviewers. So that might come as a complete surprise to you. We are nervous interviewing you because it is our job to help bring out the full set of capabilities and really help you shine. And that is not an easy job. You can't be lazy. You have to ask probing questions. If you see someone's confidence lagging, you need to jump in and say, hey, you got this. You're doing great. I heard something interesting. Tell me more about that. So it really is, I think that's something that people don't understand is we're really nervous too. We're really nervous about giving you a great experience. So I love that you mentioned
We're
that.
really serious about you, right?
We're
You
really
have to
serious
be
about
at least 1 year tenure at the firm before you're able to train to be an interviewer. There's a rigorous training. There's lots of practice before someone does their first interview and a lot of conversations about how it went in order to make decisions. And so allow your interviewer to lead because they are well trained and they also very much care about making sure that they're giving you every opportunity to
I think that's
display
an
all of
important
your
one as
skills.
well, Ashley. There's like listen to your interviewer, listen
Absolutely.
and watch for cues and make it a connected conversation versus, oh my God, I want to get out of this as fast
Right.
as possible. And you're trying to get through your story as quickly as possible without listening or pausing or stopping to see if your interviewer wants to react or ask follow-up or probing questions. So just
Yep.
have a connected conversation and discussion, because also, frankly, it's not just about us getting to know you, it's also about you getting to know us and seeing whether you
Absolutely.
could see yourself working with people like your interviewer or an environment with people like your interviewer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the case. I know we're getting at time and we could talk, as I said, this could be 7 sessions, but I'm tempted in the spirit of our Mythbuster, Ashley, maybe you'd be up for a little bit of a lightning round, a true false, where we can bust a couple of those final myths and leave
All right,
people.
I'm ready.
Oh, you do need like a flag or something, no?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna
Exactly.
true
This is
false
we
you.
definitely need. We definitely need a theme song. Okay, first one, Ashley, true or false? You need to have a business background to be successful in our process.
That's a false. That's false, right? So Solve gives you a chance to show us your problem solving skills without having any sort of business background.
Yep.
The cases don't rely on business knowledge. It's all based on your ability to structure your approach and talk through what you're thinking. We want to get to know you. And we recognize that people are coming from all sorts of different backgrounds, and our incoming colleagues are all sorts of represented
Okay,
across all
next
sorts
I
one.
love that. I love
Lightning
it.
round.
Lightning round. Marie's going to keep us
Leadership
my
experience
lightning
and personal stories, so the personal experience interview, count as much as the case in our hiring decision. True
Oh, I
or
saw that question in the chat earlier. Are they weighted the same?
Absolutely true, which is why we're asking you to
True.
prepare just as much for both of them.
Which again goes to the point that it doesn't matter if you have the best analytical answer in the world. If you can't get other people to listen to you and debate you about that answer and trust you and push back on you, doesn't matter what answer you have. So I think that is a big myth that I love that we busted. All right, Ashley, true or false? And this is what I've been hearing a lot lately, and I've seen it in the chat a bunch today. You need a referral to get an interview at McKinsey. True or false?
That's false. So everyone
Big F.
distinctive has a shot at McKinsey. I didn't have a referral, and many of the people that I know that have come to McKinsey did not have referrals.
Agreed. That is and people people often know folks in McKinsey. If you do know people, what a great honest way to ask them, what is it really like to work there? What do you love about your job? What do you not love about your job? So use those relationships if you have them to help you. It does not factor in or help us at all in selecting and finding wonderful you.
Yes. All right, looking at the clock, we are kind of out of time, a minute over, but we just want to make sure we get to our last and final segment and we don't leave this travel without a snack
Snacks.
for the road. Exactly. We
Snacks.
don't want anybody to get hangry. So Ashley, you've given us already so much good advice today on how to be successful in our process. What is your number one tip for staying sane, not just in our process, but for any high performance job interview?
Oh, I love this. The sanity
This
tip.
is really good. Schedule just as much time to find your comfort zone as you're scheduling to prepare. So if that's taking walks or exercising or talking to people you care about or going to see a show, make sure that you're taking time for yourself across the entire process, just to rejuvenate.
I think that's great. I always said in when I coach candidates, it's 3 legs for the preparation. It's the problem solving part, it's the personal part, and it's also then the you part. How can you be most confident?
Yes.
And how can you control your nerves if sometimes your nerves might you know, I don't know how you say, get the best of you or run away with you, right? I'm not
Yep.
sure how you say that in English, but how can you make sure you can shine in the best possible way during the interview? And that's very personal. For some, it's like you said, a walk, a conversation with a friend, a power pose.
Power pose.
I
We
used
won't
to
do the
always hum a
power
song
pose.
to myself before anything important. Somewhere Over the Rainbow was always
Oh, is that
my
interesting?
power
And
song.
yes, I
Not
like the
quite
power
sure
song.
why, but
And also just the simple self-talk. I know that sounds silly,
Absolutely.
but your
yes.
self-talk track that I'm really talented and maybe McKinsey will be lucky enough that I'll get to work with them someday and maybe it won't be the right fit for either of us. And that's okay too, because you're going to do something wonderful. So that self-talk I think is really important. Thank you. Thank you for staying with
Thank you,
us for
Ashley,
this was Ashley.
Thank you.
Such good advice.
Thanks
and
everyone for
everybody for
joining us.
listening.
Yes. Oh my goodness. And guys, we again, please keep the feedback coming. The only reason we're doing this is for you. So help us make these sessions as useful as possible. Bring the feedback. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, what you want more of, less of, etc. And we hope you'll join us for the next one on September 11th. So
And
stay
signups
tuned.
are open, so you can already register
Oh,
for
great. Terrific. Thanks, guys. Thanks
Thank
again,
you.
Ashley. Okay.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.